Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Seric Show, where we will be doing another playoff breakdown. This playoff series will be including the teams, the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Montreal Canadiens. So, Eric, take us away.
All right, I will take us away right to the Steel City of Pittsburgh. Looking at the Pittsburgh Penguins right now, they were fifth in the Eastern Conference, very close to snagging one of the byes into the round robin, just to determine seeding, already having a playoff spot. So this is almost a little bit frustrating for Pittsburgh to have to re-qualify for the playoffs, considering the fact that they were very likely going to make the playoffs anyway. But I think with that, this is the first time really that the Pittsburgh Penguins have been healthy all season. I think that is something that Pens fans have to be kind of celebrating, because looking at their forward depth right now, man, it's hard to remember a time their forward depth looked this scary. Don't you think, Spencer?
I agree. Even Marlowe on that third line was someone I forgot was even added to this team, and he adds a scary element to this already offensive juggernaut.
Yeah, and all reports from Pittsburgh training camp is that Evgeny Malkin has shown up super motivated and really driving that team right now. And a motivated Malkin is a scary thought for any team, especially a team like Montreal, with that kind of lacks the center depth. And him creating a partnership with Jason Zucker and Brian Rust, who he's always had great chemistry with and had a really amazing breakout season. That would be a first line on most other teams, and then you just you add this guy. I don't know if you heard of him, Sidney Crosby, into the mix, and it's
what's his name? What is it again?
I believe it's Sidney Crosby. I'm surprised you haven't heard of him. He's a little famous. But very, very tough to stop. And I don't know what your thoughts are, but I love the fourth line on Pittsburgh. I think it's one of the best fourth lines in the league. Teddy Blueger at center, Brandon Tanev, who's an absolute shift disturber. I said shift.
Nice.
With Zach Aston Reese, all three of these guys play with speed. Can really get it on the cycle, make life absolutely miserable for the opposing team and their defensemen, but they can also score. Aston Reese and Blueger specifically have a great scoring touch, and man, that's just a tough line to contend with.
Yeah, 100%. I think that Pittsburgh definitely has a major advantage up the middle of the ice. I mean, if we go back to one of our earlier episodes, even when we did that draft where playoff teams could pick a player from one of the non-playoff teams, we had Montreal pick Jack Eichel just because of how crappy their center depth was, and how much of a problem that was going to be, and how much that problem is going to be for the Montreal Canadiens coming up against Crosby, Malkin, McCann, and Blueger. I mean, how do you compete with that when Montreal doesn't even seem to have a really strong number one center right now?
Yeah, that's a question the Habs have been asking for years, is what do they do without a top center? Their answer right now, I mean, a lot of it because of circumstance, but it has been, just do it by committee. And, this will be, a time to put it to the test and see if they can really do it. Another guy we haven't mentioned, but I think we really should, is Jake Gensel, who had an absolutely unreal season that was
coming off an injury.
Yeah, cut short because of a shoulder injury. And it seemed like he would be, maybe returning by playoff time, or actually, no, sorry. He was going to return maybe by the Stanley Cup Finals if the season progresses normal. But he's back and looking in perfect shape for the Penguins. And he's a very smart player. His IQ is off the charts. He's not super fast. He doesn't have a super hard shot, but his IQ is next level, where he knows where to go to score goals and make offense happen. And that's why he fits so well with Sidney Crosby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I'm a big soccer fan, and if you're watching, you know anything about soccer, Jake Gensel kind of reminds me of a Kai Havertz, who is just kind of a playmaker who likes to set up, but also has a scoring touch, and can play in multiple positions on the ice. So that's kind of like Jake Gensel. And let's go into the defense here. So who do you see as being a big who do you see as having the upper hand when it comes to defense, Eric?
Well, really quickly, just before we touch on the defense,
Okay.
I do think it's important to talk about, Sidney Crosby and the fact that he had to leave practice early last week, and he's still yet to hit the ice. Now he did have core muscle surgery, I think around December or January, and usually what happens after a surgery like that in the core is that flare-ups tend to happen. Because kind of every way you generate power is through the core of your body.
Yeah.
And so obviously, he's just been deemed unfit to play, and there's no timeline with that. But it's great that Malkin's been doing great, but it is of concern to Pittsburgh whether Crosby will be back, because they're not just hoping to beat Montreal, they're hoping to go on another great playoff run with this team that they put together. So Crosby's health is a question mark, and definitely a boon to Montreal if he has to take some extra time to rest.
Yeah, definitely. Crosby, as we all know, has been the best player in the league for the past decade, if not more. He's been in the league longer than a decade, right?
Yeah.
12 years, I think. Is it, or what?
14.
14. Yes. Okay. Cool. So. Yeah, until the upcoming of McDavid, it seemed like Crosby was never going to really slow down his reign of being the number one player in the league. And it still shows why. He does things every single night that any NHL player wish they could do. Do you know what I mean? He does at least one thing where you go and you look at him and you go, okay, that's the hype around this guy. That's why he's Sidney Crosby. And that's something you can't take away from the series. And if he's missing, then the Pittsburgh Penguins will 100% feel that. Yeah.
And another centerman, the last one we haven't really gone in depth is Jared McCann. And he's someone that the Penguins have actually tabbed to be sort of their next Phil Kessel, where he's going to play where Kessel did on the power play for Pittsburgh. And they're hoping that he can be on that third line providing that depth scoring, because McCann's super fast player with a great shot, but inconsistent, sort of reminds you of Phil Kessel. And, obviously Kessel was a very valuable player for them in those playoff runs, so they're hoping that McCann can kind of recapture some of that magic.
Is McCann left-handed or right-handed?
He's left-handed, and he's a centerman. Yeah. So those two things do not match up with Kessel, but they're hoping that he can provide the same kind of boost from that third line.
Same play style, of course.
But yeah, now moving on to the defenseman, Spencer, as you wanted to do. What are your thoughts on the defenseman?
For Pittsburgh?
Yes, Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Hello. I like the second line.
Oh,
just because
totally agree.
Mariano, is that his name? Marino.
John Marino.
He was the what's it called? The Hobey Baker winner? Or
I don't know if I think he was at least in consideration. I'm not sure if he won it.
He was. I think he did something big in college hockey, and he's been a big he's a rising star in the league. I think he'll be very good in the near future, but I like his play this year. I think Chris Letang is slowing down, even though he's still got the Chris Letang skill that we all like. I think he is slowing down, and Brian Dumoulin I don't really like as my first line left shot. I think their left side, especially Jack Johnson on that third pairing, is really where they lack their strength. Justin Schultz is not the worst right-handed defenseman, so their right hand seems to be all right, but their left-handed defensemen need a little bit of an upgrade. It's kind of like the opposite of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And that's how I see this Pittsburgh team.
I think each pair is a new story, you know. So they start off Brian Dumoulin. Dumoulin, you know, I think he's sort of an underrated shutdown defenseman, but he's all defense. And Letang is opposite. He's flashy, he's offensive, not great defensively. So, you know, the idea, they've been together a long time, is that they kind of complement each other and can pick up each other's shortcomings. But, you know, they haven't looked great in training camp from reports out of Pittsburgh. But on the other hand, Marcus Pettersson, John Marino, has been, you know, called kind of a stud pairing for them, where two young guys have really stepped up and played really smart hockey. Marino especially was a revelation for them. I mean, they acquired his rights for a 6th-round pick, and he stepped in and, you know, kind of under the radar just because there have been so many other great rookie defensemen this year, but he's been amazing for them.
Where did they pick him up? Out of Boston?
No, I believe he was actually on the Edmonton Oilers. That's where he was drafted.
Oh.
So.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
that sucks for Edmonton.
Yeah, you know, it's you know, definitely stings a little bit, especially because, I mean, a lot of Pittsburgh fans are tabbing him to be their next number one defenseman and actually take over for Letang. That's how solid he was this year. So yeah, Edmonton could have had him as well this year. I mean, just imagine what that could have done for them. But and then we get to the third pair. Jack Johnson, Justin Schultz. Just an absolute adventure. I can imagine the memes when this pair gets out in the playoffs. Man, none of them, like, neither is great defensively. Just, I don't know. That's I think Montreal is going to want to exploit that pair as much as possible.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be seeing that guy on the left side on the ice very much.
No, and you know, there'll probably be heavy minutes for Dumoulin and Pettersson just to make up for it, because I don't think the speed of Montreal is a good matchup for them. Montreal has gotten a lot quicker over the past couple of years. Their forwards are small but fast, and you know, if they can, you know, start to generate chances and pick apart that defensive pair, that could, you know, be problematic for Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So going back a little bit further from their defense to their goalies. And
this is the most interesting conversation I think we're going to have in terms of goaltending.
Ooh, we have yet another, and as you said, this is a big one. Spencer, who do you think will start, and who do you think should start?
I think Tristan Jarry will start, and I think Tristan Jarry should start. Because I think Tristan Jarry is going to be the next goalie of Pittsburgh. I think they're going to be getting rid of Murray, and I know Murray has this pedigree of being a playoff performer, but what did he do last playoffs? He got them to the second round to lose to Washington. No. That was the year before that even. Yeah, they got swept. Yeah, never mind. I'm wrong. Even then, yeah, they got swept. So I think adding new blood like Jarry instead of Murray just to try it out. Jarry is not even like a lower level of skill than Murray, I'd argue, this season. I think Jarry has played unbelievably and really earned a starting role on the Pittsburgh lineup. And can we just talk about how annoying Pittsburgh is? Because they've had 3 homegrown goalies to basically, like, almost, like, if Jarry wins the cup with them this year, they've had 3 homegrown goalies to win the cup. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's but the question is a big one, because, you know, their general manager Jim Rutherford did say that in his mind Matt Murray's still the guy. This was before training camp had started. Mike Sullivan was a little bit more tentative to say that, but from indications, it seems like Tristan Jarry will have to outplay Matt Murray significantly in training camp to earn the start. It seems like that was sort of happening. Murray kind of struggled to start off camp. He's righted the ship a little bit recently, but Jarry just seems like super loose. So I agree. I think Jarry should be the one. Doesn't have the
pressure on him.
I think he should be the one to start. I do trust Mike Sullivan to make the right choice. And I think he showed that, especially in their 2017 Cup run, where Marc-Andre Fleury took over for a little bit and helped him, and then at a certain point in the Ottawa series, he switched back to Matt Murray. So he's not afraid to do what he needs to do with his goalies. But I just have a feeling that, a goalie that has brought his team to 2 Stanley Cups, I think he's going to show more in the next week or so, and he's going to play himself into the starter's role. I think
we'd hope so.
I think Matt Murray will end up starting. I think Jari would be their goalie of the future, but I just have a feeling on this one. I'm not saying it's the right one, but I
do you
Matt
think Jari
around.
Deserves to start over Murray?
Well, I don't know.
I think the I don't know is your answer, is it not? The fact that you even have to question it, the guy who's won the 2 Stanley Cups versus the guy who's being noted as a backup, and you're still even questioning it. It shows that there is something there in Tristan Jarry that Murray doesn't really give you, or Murray lacks, or Murray's been giving you some hesitance, and that's important to notice.
Well, for me, I just think it's tough, really, to say, you deserve anything in a profession like being an athlete.
Okay.
But I think the better question is, do you think he's earned the start? And I think he's done everything in his power to earn it. Whether that's enough, that's for Sullivan to decide. In my mind, I probably go with. I think I would trust Jari more, but I think Murray will get the start.
Okay, cool.
That's my answer.
Let us move on to the Canadiens de Montreal. I can't. Okay, I'm not. Okay.
Nope. That's going to alienate our French viewers.
Yep. Okay. You start this, please.
Okay. So Montreal Canadiens were obviously not expecting to get this far. They made some moves at the trade deadline to trade away players like Nate Thompson and Nick Cousins, who ideally, they're built for the playoffs. That's why you keep them around. That's why other teams wanted them, is because they're valuable in a playoff run, and in those meaningful games, especially tasked with shutting down the opponent's top teams. So they're not expecting to be here, but I think it's a good bout of experience for them. With one of the most underrated lines in the league, Thomas Tatar, Philip Deneau, Brendan Gallagher as a first line. Analytically, it is a top 10 line in the NHL. Without having a flashy star, just the way that they're able to control the pace of play, I think it can definitely cause Pittsburgh some fits. So as strange as it is, I think Montreal kind of has, a top line that's to be feared. You don't think of any of these players really as stars, but they have a top line. Beyond that, it's kind of a mess, and it's tough to know exactly what the lines are going to look like at this point, because they have a lot of players that are sort of at the same level. Who do you think stands out in the next crop of players?
You got to look at Nick Suzuki, right? He's young. He's 18, I think, or how old
I think he'd be 20 now.
20 now?
Or 21.
Okay. Yeah, but still, he's a young centerman. He's right-handed. He came over in a trade with Vegas, I believe, right?
Yeah.
For the Pacioretty deal. I think Arturi Lehkonen could have a big impact. He's not the biggest dude, but he plays bigger than he is. I always thought he was 6'3" for some reason, but apparently he's only like 5'11".
Yeah, no, he's a small guy.
1. Yeah, I know. I always thought he was bigger just because the way he imposes himself out there, I guess. I think that those two players, being young and fast and full of skill, could really bring out the other players on their line. Like Jordan Wheel is a possibility to be enhanced by Suzuki. Paul Byron has a great shot, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Um,
he's pretty. He's super fast. That's
yeah, okay,
Byron's calling card is really his speed, and
okay,
yeah, he's able to really
okay.
drive
So
defenses
even
back.
then, he's able to move into spaces. I'm not as familiar with the Habs lineup
Hmm.
as others, but yeah, I think those two players are the ones that like point stand out in my mind.
Yeah, I would add Yoel Armia to the mix as well, who had a great start to
Okay.
the season before injuries kind of came on the scene. But he's a big guy with long reach, who also kills penalties at times, uh, and can add a nice element of defensively responsible play while also providing some offense. But for me, the biggest impact really, I think, would come from Max Domi, if everything goes right, and this is what Montreal has to be hoping for. Because he is a type 1 diabetic. He also has celiac disease, which are two things that have
Hmm.
caused him to have some trepidation going into training camp situation. He has started training camp. He took some time off and really assessed his options, and got some opinions and everything. But he's made it clear he's ready to play, and he's a player that, if you remember in the World Juniors, really stepped up in the big games.
Yeah,
And he hasn't yet played in the NHL playoffs.
that's gonna be
And
interesting.
he's got to be chomping at the bit to get that opportunity. And if he can really, I mean, he's fast. He plays hard. Um,
Milan Lucic.
yeah,
Sorry, Brad Marchand.
yeah, exactly. And he has the ability to really help Montreal get some swagger and some momentum to say, you know what, we can take down this Pittsburgh team. That's going to come a lot from Domi and his ability to really get under the skin of the other team.
And
Um,
put up points
yeah, and put up points. I
because
mean,
he
he's
can do that too.
a super skilled player. So,
Great
uh,
on their power play.
hmm yeah.
Hmm.
So we'll see if he, whether it's on the wing or at center. As I said, Claude Julien still has, he's still messing around with a lot of lineup. Kotkaniemi might draw in at some point, but yeah, I think Domi is really important to keep in mind as well.
Yeah,
With
definitely.
their defense, Spencer, um, immediately my thought is, how good can Shea Weber be having some extra time off to rest up and really be at his best before this playoffs?
Um, in terms of what was he injured before?
Well, just wear and tear from a long season. There are always nagging injuries that get in the way, um, and
I think.
as an older player who has accrued a lot of miles, I think any time off to kind of rest and reset, and have an opportunity at the playoffs, which Montreal didn't really have throughout the season. I think Shea Weber is still one of the top defensemen in the world.
Yeah, as you said, like I mean, Shea Weber is one of the top defensemen in the NHL and in the world. But it's interesting to think about because as you get older, I'd assume that it'd be harder to get things going once you stopped. Like the season had stopped, right? And once you get that rest, yes, you're resting, but you're also getting rustier and rustier, and it's harder as you get older to get things going quicker and off the bat like
Hmm.
they do now, especially after all that rest. Shea Weber has to get his legs going to perfect a playoff playoff performance, like a conditioning basically in a faster time than he usually gets throughout an entire season, right?
Hmm.
So I think that will be harder for him to get to the type of level he needs to be at or the level he was at. So it might be slower for older players. We might come to see that. But who knows? I mean, maybe Shea Weber is immune to that stuff and just walks on the ice and is the best player since Bobby Orr. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't know what's gonna happen. We don't even know if the league's gonna actually play. But that's another issue.
Yeah, but as far as projecting what
Yes,
you
as
think will happen,
projections. Yes.
um, yeah, I think Shea Weber is someone that's going to be tasked with. He's probably going to play close to, I think, over 25 minutes for sure a night, and matched up with either Crosby or Malkin, maybe both at times. I mean, Jeff Petrie can do that too. It's not a bad secondary option, but I mean, if you're Montreal, you want Weber on the ice as much as possible. Ben
100%.
Sherratt has been pretty good for them this year as well, sort of a revelation. Offensively as well, chipping in for
From
them
Winnipeg,
a little
right?
bit. So, I think you're going to be seeing a lot of that pair right now. And the other thing with Montreal's defense is Brett Kulak and Victor Mete are not on the ice with them. Now they're unfit to play, so we don't know exactly whether. I think we can talk a little bit about the fact that I believe 9 players tested positive. I think a week or two ago. So I think it's only natural to assume that they were probably in that group. So that's a question mark to see if they'd be ready to go for them, because Kulak's had a great year. Mete can really move his feet, so they'd be really good for them on the back end as well.
100%. I definitely agree.
And now
going to my X factor in this whole series, I think it will be the goaltending.
Yeah, and this is
in
what
terms
we'll
of
get
this
to
entire playoffs as well. But Montreal's goaltending, obviously, Charlie Lindgren isn't going to be starting a game, even if there's no way. Let's just erase that from any contention. Carey Price will be the starter for the Montreal Canadiens, deservingly so. Even though he hasn't had the best couple seasons as of recently, Montreal is reliant on Carey Price to get anywhere at any time in this league. Carey Price has the ability to steal games, steal series, and steal competitions, and we've seen it throughout his entire career with Canada, and even when Montreal was first in their conference and at the peak of their performances. And Carey Price, who knows, maybe this rest was a good time to really take a break off for himself and really reevaluate things and see what he needs to work on himself. Instead of physically, maybe that's what he needed, and hopefully he comes back and turns into the Carey Price that the Montreal Canadiens paid $10 million a year for. So I think Price could steal this entire series, and what do you think, Eric?
Well, I mean, obviously he has, he played up at that level before, and he has the ability. But I'm not sure if he is, after a couple, let's be honest, mediocre seasons where, they've hoped that he can reach that same level, and he hasn't really. He hasn't really lived up to that contract.
No. Ever since he signed it.
I think it's, it's the biggest question mark in the series because of the effect that it can have if he, brings out his Hart Trophy form. But I think it's a valid question at this point to ask if that season was an exception to the rule, where that's not who he is as a goalie. He's still a good goalie. He's still a great goalie, but he's not that, goalie capable of stealing multiple series on the way to a Stanley Cup. Like he was. He played at that level before. And so, with such a small sample size, anything can happen and goalies can get hot. I don't think, there was so much concern and people were up in arms when this playoff format was announced because of, Price's track record and Pittsburgh having to face him, when they should have probably been in the playoffs anyway. But I think it's a little overblown because I don't think he has that much more of a chance of getting hot and stealing the series as a lot of other goalies around the league that are just, more unheralded than him.
Yeah, definitely. So I have to ask you. So it says here, as you've pointed out, notable extras for Montreal are Kotkaniemi. Do you think that Kotkaniemi could make an appearance at all in this playoffs?
I think it's likely he could. I think he could start because, as I said, Claude Julien is still, mixing around with line combinations. Exactly where, he seems to have come back to training camp with a new attitude and new kind of perspective, which is valuable, because of some difficulties kind of starting his career. I think he could, but I don't know exactly how much he'd really move the needle against the amazing forwards on Pittsburgh, and he'd probably just be there to hopefully break even. I don't think he's gonna make a huge offensive impact. I think he could play, but I think the impact he'd have on the series is sort of limited. What do you think?
See, just to add on to that, do you see his ceiling has lowered since the last evaluation of him?
I think it's probably risen a little bit in my mind, just from hearing positive things about his training camp, and kind of the attitude that he's brought. And
what about his performance in the AHL?
I think a lot has changed since then, and his performance in the AHL was, I believe it's fairly successful, other than scoring goals. I think he struggled a little bit with that, but yeah, I think there's still high hopes for him. I mean, he's still super young. He's got lots of time to figure it out. So, I don't see him as a number one center, really. And I don't know if Montreal fans expect that. Maybe they do, and this is shocking to hear. But I think he could probably be a real solid second line center, which once again sucks for Montreal to hear. They've been hoping for that number one center. I don't think it's Kotkaniemi. I don't think he has quite the offensive, really the it factor offensively, but he seems pretty solid defensively, and maybe around a 60, 65 point player.
Hey man, I'd take that any day. Okay.
Oh, for sure. No, valuable player for sure, and the kid's gonna be good. He'll be all right at the end of the day, but I think expectations kind of got blown out of proportion when
he had such a good start.
He did it, and he rose to third.
And he was picked so highly. That's the rise in the draft, I think, really screwed the expectations of him. Mm-hmm. Skewed, not screwed.
Yeah. Sorry. Especially with someone like Brady Tkachuk, who was picked after him, being able to make such an immediate impact, when Kotkaniemi was never really going to be able to do that. Tkachuk was more ready for the NHL right away.
Exactly. So, Eric, who do you see winning this series?
Once again, small sample size could happen and Price could get hot, but, we got to think of the probabilities here. And I think even Montreal fans would agree with me in saying that Pittsburgh Penguins are the favorite, and I would pick them to win this series. And you know what, Montreal, that's fine, because, I saw a survey where fans were asked whether they would rather win the Stanley Cup or go forward in the playoffs or win the draft lottery. And 91% of Habs fans wanted to win the lottery instead. So they're kind of like that's where their focus is, to be honest, which is remarkable. I don't blame them, because
they did sell before. They did sell at the trade deadline. They were a team that was selling to tank for Lafreniere, and all of a sudden the season pauses, and now they have a shot at winning the cup. It's like it's exactly what the Habs didn't want. They didn't want this season to end. They wanted it to keep going the way it was so that they could get a lower spot in the draft. But like you see here, they're going to put in an effort. They're professionals and they're competitive. Of course they're going to put an effort in, and any team can win. But I am going to agree with you wholeheartedly. Pittsburgh being the favorites, I completely agree that their offense will just steamroll this Montreal team. I think this is the best offense Pittsburgh's had averagely, like throughout the entirety of their lineup in a very long time. And I think you'll see that as the playoffs go on, the depth of their lines will really have an impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you said, though, it's important, someone like Brendan Gallagher, Max Domi, Thomas Tatar, like they have the kind of work ethic that they're not going to allow, circumstances or hearing, that, they want this draft pick or whatever, they're going to work their asses off. They're going to play super hard. So
the players don't want the draft pick. I mean, if you interview any player, even the older players who like talk about all this stuff, like Nick Kyprios was quoted like saying like, we don't care about the stupid draft pick. We want to win. We want to win this. We want to be part of something for ourselves. We don't care about. We don't have to babysit this guy for the next 4 years of our career. And like they want to win now. They're players to win now, at all times. And that's the thing that fans need to look outside of and be like, oh, they didn't tank. Like, what's wrong with Montreal? Why didn't they just give up the series? Like, because they want to win. They're professionals.
Yeah, no, it is important to note though that it's gotten to the point in Montreal where Claude Julien acknowledged the fact that he knows how many fans want that, and that he doesn't blame them because of how exciting the possibility is. But on the edge, it's still going to be a competitive series, and there's a chance that Montreal could take it. I just think Pittsburgh's probably going to be too much for them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was another episode of the Seric Show. Thank you very much for watching, and tune in next time.